A rent control tenant in San Francisco who only pays $550 a month is suing their landlord for harassment because they only offered them $5,000 to leave. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting story for you today, and it's an entitled tenant story, and it comes out of San Francisco, California. So you shouldn't be surprised that this is all about rent control, okay? This is about a rent control tenant who pays super cheap rent and refuses to leave, okay? They've lived in this unit for more than 20 years, yet they expect to be able to pay cheap rent forever, and the landlord not having it. Landlord is trying to get rid of this person by offering them a decent sized payout, but they're like, hey, I can't find a comparable place for this cheap in San Francisco, so no, I'm refusing to leave. Well, no. You're not going to be able to find a place for $550 a month in San Francisco. You're living in fantasy world, and this landlord has been subsidizing your cheap living for the last 20 years. That's absolutely ridiculous. Now, I don't agree with the laws that say that you have to limit your rent to this amount. You have to limit your rent increases to this amount. I don't agree with those laws at all. However, these laws are in place in this city, and when you invest there into a property that has rent control and you have these sort of tenants in there, don't expect to be able to get these tenants out easily. Now, this landlord is going to have to up the amount that they are offering. That's my personal opinion. They're going to have to offer a great deal more to be able to get rid of this tenant. Otherwise, they could lose millions, honestly. I mean, the properties there are worth so much, you could lose millions of dollars. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So first of all, how much would you offer a tenant in San Francisco to leave their unit if they're holding up your renovation, holding up the value of your property, and, you know, just basically ruining your business, okay? Like, in my mind, it might be a six-figure payout that you have to give this tenant to get rid of them. Okay, and that might be what the tenant's waiting for too. They're like, hey, I've got my golden ticket. I can't wait to get it. But it's what, you know, it's the cost of doing business. It is the cost of doing business. I guess it kind of depends on how big the overall building is as compared to, you know, what rent that they are paying off. Now, if you can get away with renovating every other unit in the building except for theirs, then maybe that would work out, but I don't know. We'll have to read the article, see the details of what this landlord is going through. So anyway, let's get into it. This article is coming from NBCBayArea.com, and it says, San Francisco tenant accuses landlord of harassment and push to evict. Rodrigo Mendoza is the only tenant left in the house after refusing at least two $5,000 buyout offers from his landlord, saying he'd have to leave the city if he lost the room he rents out for $550 a month. Yeah, you'd have to leave the city. You couldn't live in Omaha, Nebraska for that low of rent, okay? Now, I guess maybe you could if all you're renting it is one room, but the question is, how big is this house? And how is this house falling under rent control? But anyway, let me get into the article. Maybe they'll go over some more details. A disabled tenant who's rented a room in San Francisco's Ocean View neighborhood for nearly 2 decades is suing his new landlord, alleging the landlord and his son have waged a years-long campaign of harassment to get him to leave the rent-controlled home, including shutting off his utilities, threats, and physical force, and 8 unsuccessful eviction lawsuits. Rodrigo Mendoza is the only tenant left in the house after refusing at least two $5,000 buyout offers from his landlord, saying he'd have to leave the city if he lost the room he rents out for $550 a month. This has been difficult, said Mendoza, who has suffered multiple strokes and has had several toes amputated due to complications from diabetes. I'm a bit limited in my ability to work. You know, I know this might sound morbid, right? That this guy, you know, he's had multiple strokes and diabetes, toes amputated. Doesn't sound like he has much longer to live, honestly. Okay? Might be a little bit morbid, but that might be the best thing, just to wait around for a few years until he passes away. But then again, how big is this place? Okay? They're describing it as a house. So a house that falls under rent control, maybe a house that has been converted into multiple units. I don't know. I don't know the rent control law there well enough to know why a house would be under rent control, but obviously having one room in the house occupied would mean that the whole house, you know, like if you wanted to rent it out as a single family home, wouldn't be possible. If you wanted to renovate it and flip it, it wouldn't be possible. You know, and obviously $550 a month isn't going to even cover the mortgage. So it's a lose, 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 lose situation. Now, if this person is doing so awful that they're having strokes and they're disabled and all that, right? They need to be in like a senior care facility. That's what my personal opinion is. Like you can't even be living up in this place because there aren't accommodations here for you. My other question is, how in the world are, you know, like if it's a full house and you're the only one living there, like, are you paying for all the utilities in the house? Are you even on the utilities, or is the landlord expected to pay for the utilities? Because you're the only one using them. You know, like these situations, this is part of the reason why I say, I don't like houses that have been converted into multiple units, even if it's being rented per room or whatever. I don't like that because, you know, I want each individual to be able to have their name on the utilities, okay? And you know, each individual, if they don't pay the utility bill, they're responsible, not the landlord. Obviously, in a place like San Francisco, I'm sure that it would somehow fall back onto the landlord. But, you know, I also don't like the, you know, like one tenant living in a, you know, with a shared kitchen and all that. And you basically say, well, you know, if I want to fix this place up, I have to fix the entire place. I have to have the entire place empty. Okay? Whereas if you have each individual unit, you know, built as separate units, you can fix up one unit, fix up the other unit, you know, and then you could still have this one unit over here that isn't up and repaired yet. So, I mean, from the sound of it, it just sounds like a very complicated situation. But he described his landlord as the new landlord, and he has a problem with the new landlord. Yet he said that the new landlord has been trying to get rid of him for years. Now, if this is a new landlord, why have they been trying to get rid of you for years? This isn't somebody who just bought the place 6 months ago. Okay, this is years-long battle to get rid of you. You know, just, I hate the entitlement that these tenants have. Like, I am entitled to this $550 a month, even if it bankrupts this guy over here. This guy needs to pay to keep me living in here for super cheap forever. No, absolutely not. That is your job to take care of yourself. But, you know, on another level, you might expect the government to step in and help somebody who is disabled and unable to work, especially in a place like California. So, yeah, absolutely not the private property owner's responsibility. Despite Mendoza's limited ability to work, he said he's always paid rent on time. But Mendoza said his problems at home began when his new landlord, Beirous Halali, bought the building in 2022 and made it clear he wanted Mendoza and the other tenants gone. Mendoza's suit alleges his landlord intended to buy the property and get rid of its rent-controlled tenants in order to re-rent the property at soaring market rate prices. Ever since refusing that first buyout offer in early 2022, Mendoza's lawsuit claims his landlord has gone to extreme lengths to kick him out of the home. In March of 2022, the lawsuit accuses Halali of shutting off PG&E along with water and garbage utilities at the home in order to force Mendoza and other residents of the premises to move out. You know, I don't know what the landlord has done, you know, in terms of shutting the utilities off. Okay? I don't know. Maybe this is true. Maybe it's not. The fact of the matter is, though, that you're the only tenant in there. The landlord cannot pay the bills based on your $550 a month. It doesn't matter if you always paid your rent on time. It doesn't matter. Okay? This is not you don't own the property. You are not the owner of the property. Okay? You have no rights. In my opinion, you should be kicked to the curb. Give you proper notice, eviction, gone, period. This landlord obviously bought this rent control property in 2022, so they've owned it for 3 years. They bought it with the intention of removing the rent control tenants and bringing the rents up to market rates. And part of that process is offering buyouts to tenants. Now, this guy, he's holding on. He's got his little newspaper article. Oh, I'm disabled. It's a bunch of garbage. It's a bunch of garbage. He just wants a bigger payout. And this landlord needs to step up and pay him. Okay, get rid of this guy, because this guy will cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in my opinion, it would be worth it to increase the payout a little bit. Like, not ridiculous, obviously. I have heard of six-figure payouts in San Francisco, but you know, whatever it takes to get this guy out of there that will still make you able to make a profit off of this building. But what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you think that a payout is necessary in this sort of case? Put a comment in the comment section down below.